Hi, thanks for coming by today to share a few moments to hear a short story I wrote about my paternal grandfather. It's called Red Georgia Clay. Some days are just better than others. I muse as I sit on the front porch of my log cabin. I live in the beautiful hills of Tennessee now, but I was born and raised in South Georgia. I'm looking out at those beautiful hills as I wonder what today will bring. Just the thought provides me with an air of expectancy. I built this cabin some 22 years ago and have loved it ever since. It feels good to have lived in one place so long. It is early on a July morning that promises to be another hot one. It is the 14th day in a row with high temperatures in the upper 90s and a heat index of more than 105 degrees. Even the taller trees are beginning to suffer, and leaves are coming down from them as a result. I can see them falling like rain. I've lived on this farm for over 32 years now. I'm looking at the same old trees with the same old leaves, I briefly think. Briefly. Then I correct my thinking. Even the same old tree produces new leaves every year. And each morning we are given a new day filled with opportunities, new chances. I'm sure there's a metaphor there somewhere. I look over my coffee cup at trees I'd planted when I first moved here. Some of them now stand over 50 feet tall, emphasizing the passage of time. And while I may see one tree, every single leaf has its own story of struggling, failing, and succeeding, like this one about my paternal grandfather. His name was John Arthur Harrell, and he was a leaf on my family tree. He was born long ago in the swamp land of South Georgia, known as the Okefenokee. He grew up to receive a third-grade education. I say that because back then you were a full-fledged field hand at a very early age. Once you'd learned to read and write, you went to the field. You learned the rest of what you'd need to know there. My grandfather learned to be a loving but no-nonsense kind of man. Thinking back, I am transported to simpler days. I can smell bacon frying in a skillet. I can hear it sizzling, and I am taken back in time. Grandpa had made his usual breakfast every morning since he and grandmother were married. His daily breakfast offered grandmother a brief reprieve from cooking. She would cook both dinner and supper while grandpa and I worked on the farm. Back when they were young, life was hard and rather short, so there was no time to waste. They tied the knot when grandmother was just 14. As I've said, they grew up fast in those days. She was already taking care of the younger siblings in her family daily by then, as the rest of the family went to the field. She cooked and sewed while she watched her younger brothers and sisters. It was 5:50 a.m. when grandmother joined us at the table. Grandpa asked the blessing, then I filled my plate for two reasons. One, it was delicious. And two, I didn't know what work awaited us, but I did know there would be lots of it, and I'd need energy for it. The breakfast consisted of grits, eggs, and tomato gravy. Then there was bacon and toast, orange juice and coffee. After we ate, Grandpa and I did the dishes. Now our work day could begin. Boy, he said, pour the slop jar in a 5-gallon bucket and let's get going. Yes, sir, I responded and did as I was told. We would go around to our neighbors' houses and collect theirs as well. Back in those days, folks kept a jar with a lid on it under the kitchen sink where they deposited their food scraps. Grandpa saw this as a free meal for his hogs. Nothing was wasted back then. That generation had been through hard times, and they were both no nonsense and frugal as a result. On this particular morning, I had taken my new Daisy BB gun with me. After we had poured the slops into the pig trough, I took out my gun. I was now a guide on an African safari. I began sneaking around looking for big game when I noticed a fly sitting on the side body of Grandpa's pickup truck. He seemed to be daring me to take a shot. I raised my BB gun and took careful aim. As I slowly squeezed the trigger, I thought, "Goodbye, Mr. Fly." But what I saw was, "Goodbye, glass in the back of Grandpa's truck." The fly flew past me and seemed to be laughing as he did so. So I flew to Grandmother. I had to appeal to her, or I knew what was coming. She admonished me, telling me I knew better, then saved me from a whipping. The next day, as we drove to town to have the window fixed, the rest of the glass fell out onto our backs. He slowed the truck and pulled over so we could clean the glass from the seat. When we had finished, he just stared at me. Without a word, he had spoken volumes. I earned the money to repair the window by helping a neighbor in their tobacco patch, and I never went on another African safari. Grandpa reminded me that he couldn't afford the luxury of my vivid imagination, and neither could I if I was to be successful in life. He said to stop letting my mind wander and to focus. Then in conclusion he added, "You see, boy, in life, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." Later on in life that makes plenty of sense. As I got older, he seemed to get smarter. It's funny how that works. Well, after our business in town was done, we rode most of the 10 miles back to our little community in silence. I guess Grandpa wanted me to think about what I'd done. Our silence had taken on a deafening volume of its own when Grandpa turned on his blinker and into the little store next to the dirt road that led to our farm. We went into the store, and he bought us each an RC Cola and a moon pie. We took him out on the bench on the front porch of the store to watch it rain. We needed this rain badly to help all of our crops continue to grow. However, I could see the dirt road quickly turning to a muddy mess, which would soon make it a challenge to get home. That red Georgia clay gets pretty slick and boggy after a downpour like this one. Well, by the time we left the store, it was raining so hard we could barely see. That dirt road had now become an obstacle course. The truck slid this way and that as Grandpa tried to accelerate. We eventually came to an incline in the road that Grandpa failed to navigate. In spite of his best efforts, we ended up in the ditch. We just sat there for a few minutes waiting for the rain to slack up. There was no real hurry, and he knew he'd need the tractor anyway. After a few minutes, the rain tapered off, and he instructed me to walk on home, get the tractor and the log train. "And son," he added, "get on back and keep your imagination to yourself this time." He knew me, and he was right in telling me that. As I walked toward the house, despite my best efforts, I began transforming into a pirate who had lost his ship and was desperately trying to find it. My ship was a Massey Ferguson 35, and as soon as I turned the key, the motor roared to life. I backed it out of the barn and set sail for Grandpa and his pickup truck. He seemed both pleased and impressed with me, since I had returned in a timely fashion, as he put it. He hooked the chain to the truck and soon had us out of the ditch and back onto the dirt road, or mud road. I thought we finally might actually get on home. Well, about that time, a Cadillac came up behind Grandpa's stationary truck. He saw that the truck wasn't moving and attempted to go around. He was going way too fast, and I knew it as I watched that slight muddy incline claim yet another victim. In spite of a grand attempt, he too ended up in the ditch. He sat in his car for a minute or two as if wondering what had just happened. Then he opened his door but didn't step out. I could see why. The car was knee-deep in mud and he was really dressed up. His shiny shoes almost blinded me. They perfectly matched his suit. I thought he must be headed to a funeral. But he informed us that he was an important businessman from Atlanta and that he was in a terrible hurry. He pulled out a wad of money and offered Grandpa $50 to pull him back onto the road and to make it quick. He was being rude to Grandpa. He didn't tolerate rudeness very well. Grandpa wasn't a rude person himself, and he didn't expect it from others. He informed the man in no uncertain terms that he wasn't interested in his money. The big businessman from Atlanta had obviously never heard of bartering, which is the way business was conducted around here for the most part. Grandpa slowly backed his tractor up to the car and stepped down. He began hooking the log chain to the axle of the car when the man began raising his voice at Grandpa, demanding to know what he was doing. He demonstrated patience. Grandpa, that is. But I could tell he didn't feel it. He was beginning to grow irritated with this man. Grandpa stood up and looked at the man, who was growing angrier by the moment himself. I knew something or someone had to give, and I knew it wouldn't be Grandpa. The man yelled again at Grandpa, "Don't you scratch my $20,000 Cadillac." Grandpa knelt again and began unhooking the chain from the car. "What in the world are you doing now? I told you I was in a hurry, and I know you heard me," the man yelled. Grandpa softly replied, "Oh, I heard you, loud and clear. It's hard not to hear you with all the yelling you're doing. And besides, I wouldn't think of scratching your $20,000 Cadillac with my $30,000 tractor." Then he turned to me and instructed me to take the truck on home, and he'd follow me on the tractor. All the way home, I could see a smile on his face as I looked in the rearview mirror. It had been a good day as far as he was concerned. He had taken care of business and still kept his pride intact. I looked down at my empty coffee cup. It's as if I can hear Grandpa's voice saying, "Boy, we better get a move on." It brings a smile to my face. As I start to get up, a strong breeze announces a coming storm as it blows a leaf across the porch and onto the coffee table right beside my cup. "And a good morning to you, Grandpa," I say out loud to the leaf. As I take my cup into the cabin, it's as if I can feel his presence. Once again, I smile as I wonder, with an air of expectancy, what this day will bring. I can hear thunder in the distance. It sounds like another heavy rain coming. I don't worry though, because I still have Grandpa's old tractor and a log chain. But most importantly, I have his spirit. And not even the heaviest of rains can wash that away. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, we have several others on YouTube as well. Red Bandana, My Money's on Mama, The Property Line, Mama Helps Me Keep My Word, You'd Better Think About Going to College, Grandpa discovers religion. Love may be blind, but the neighbors ain't. Goodbye, old friend. And now, Red Georgia Clay. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day.